welcome back to the Next Build podcast. Today, we're joined by a special guest, Ann Cantera. Please introduce yourself and kind of tell us what you're building.
Hi, Nathan. Yeah, what am I not building? It feels like right now my main area of focus is omnimodal design, which I think people are like, well, we know multimodal. What's omnimodal? Omnimodal is the concept of the perfect modal at the perfect moment, designing for the moment in the sense of what is the best interface for me to be interfacing with in this moment based on context, task, and cognitive load. So yeah, it sounds a little sci-fi, but it isn't at all. It's a very common conversation design technique, and I think it is going to spread into all interactions, and that's kind of my happy place, fun place right now, where my experiments are happening. Along with self-building interfaces, generative interfaces, all the fun stuff. But my work that I actually get paid to do is in AI consulting for small businesses and conversational AI, which is voice chat and interfaces that you can conversate with. So yeah, thank you for having me. This should be fun.
Always a pleasure. We'll jump pretty quickly into talking about what you do because you do so much. Talking more to business owners from your experience using AI, what should companies be thinking about? And then, like, what are some of the differences between a company that's just paying for AI and that's actually getting real business value from it?
Yeah, and it really depends on the size of the business too. Like what's happening in enterprise is wildly different than's happening, with the mom and pop photography studio down the block. So I think it's just really important to differentiate between small, medium, large, and what's the differences happening. In enterprise, what I think we're seeing, I keep on saying, mistakes fueled by hubris. We're seeing a lot of sprinkle AI on it and how that is not working out very well, right? Like I literally have a t-shirt that says sprinkle some AI on it is not an AI strategy. Because that's what happened. It was like almost like this weird competition between leadership and like who can bolt AI onto our existing offerings and be successful. And I don't think we're seeing tons of success there. Um, Medium businesses, I feel like it's kind of a combination of what's happening in enterprise and in small businesses. And in small businesses, it's shockingly, to me, it was a shock that AI has not really entered the building that much in the sense of I go to these in person networking events for local businesses and I get a lot of, oh, I've heard of ChatGPT. I've never heard of Claude, which to me blew my mind because I'm inside this AI echo chamber of LinkedIn. So, what's happening with smaller businesses, it's like starting from zero and just teaching basics. So I do a lot of, 0 to 1 workshops for these smaller businesses. So it is a spectrum. What is happening out there is a spectrum, where the positive in large businesses is they're taking it seriously, doing trainings. When I was at LexisNexis, they took it seriously. They did a lot of trainings. They brought in multiple tools, trained people on them, trained people on the AI mindset. Um, and other places are just, you know, I see people designers posting things like, our whole design team just got in trouble because we used up all our tokens that were supposed to last us till Friday by Tuesday. And then I'll ask a question like, well, are you doing spec driven development or are you just prompting? And the responses were just prompting. And then I think to myself, so leadership gave you a Ferrari and you don't even have his driver's license, and there needs to be training. And I do offer that design leadership out there. You can't just give these tools and expect results without learning some skills. So yeah, like I said, there is a spectrum of things happening out there.
So talk about some of the other stuff that you're involved in and that you're working on, some of the organizations and nonprofits that you kind of are helping people might want to check out. What
Well,
are your involvement in that?
so Elemental Intelligence AI, Elemental with a Y, Elementyl, is my consultancy. And what made me leave enterprise and start a consultancy was I started getting really good at building these multi-agent systems that I knew these big companies were going to use as an excuse to lay people off, and I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to have anybody's layoff on my head. So that took me down the path of, all right, I'm going to start a consultancy, and I'm not going to cater to enterprise. I'm going to cater to underserved, minority owned, female owned, veteran owned, just somebody with anybody disabled who owns a business. Those are the people I want to use AI to help equalize their business, elevate their business. Um, but then what I ran into was it's very early. So what I do now is just a lot of trainings in that space. And I do individual trainings based on their job title. And then I do company trainings based on, this is safety. This is how you can use, save time, right? That is something that can mean so many different things depending on how you work and what your company does. But something as simple as an agent that labels and sorts your emails so you know what is important, so you know what isn't important, can save a lot of time per day. And, you know, if you watch the seconds and the minutes, the hours take care of themselves. So I think there's again, a whole spectrum of trainings that need to happen. But I think smaller businesses are very it's very elementary, a lot of the things I'm bringing to those companies right now, but evolving quickly.
Interesting. So I know the inevitability for some of this will be employees are managing AI agents. Will you see employees managing AI agents the same way that managers manage teams now? Like, what's your thoughts on where jobs and economics are going with some of this stuff?
Yeah, and I think that's happening less than we think it is. I think that a lot of companies are saying that, their agentic work is further along than it is. I'm lucky enough to work with the Agentics Foundation, and these are the people that are like building the future, in my opinion. I don't want it to be this way, but there's a lot of talk about the super IC, right? Like, and the super manager, and I think it's very short-sighted when you give two people the work of 20 and they're managing all these agents. If one of them gets sick or has to go on leave or gets hit by a bus, how do you replace that person who was doing the work of 10 or 20? It's just, I think it's a little bit short-sighted, but I do think it is based in reality that people will be managing agents that could have at one point been a team of people. Um, and I don't love that future for us necessarily, but I do think that there are new skills people should be learning to stay working around agents. I don't think agents are fully there yet for complex work, but certainly for highly repetitious, low risk work. And it's not new, right? I mean, those IVR, right? And, press one for store hours, right? That is an agent that was doing a very highly repetitive, low risk task. So, I think we're just seeing that evolve into other things. And I think we're also seeing a lot of hype. There are people out there that are using AI to run their business and help them. I'm one of them, right? Like, I have a lead generation swarm. I have a cold outreach agent. But I think at the enterprise level, this whole concept of, the super IC managing hundreds of agents doing the work of humans, it's not fully realized yet. And I think there's a lot of hype out there, but this whole technology is in its infancy. So what's true today, we've already seen it could be completely outdated in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. So it's just we are in the middle of something that I don't think any of us can gauge where it will be in 2 years. I think it's just changing rapidly. And I think, yep, people are definitely managing agents, but the results vary.
Yeah, it's interesting to talk about, like, most business owners don't have it and don't use it correctly, and then talk about agents. Let's say, like, the starting point for most business owners, they want to say we need AI, or we have a project and we want to add AI to this project. Why are projects failing before they start? And also, what is the better starting point?
Because it's the wrong question. You're starting at the wrong place. You're starting in the middle instead of at the beginning. What problem are we solving? That's where you start, right? Like, if the problem is, oh, we have to answer the phone 400 times per day to answer what our store hours are, that is an AI solution type of problem, right? So start with the problem and then match it to the appropriate solution. This whole sprinkle some AI on it. For AI isn't cheap or easy, and it isn't set it and forget it. And I think those are the three things that everybody has missed. It's not cheap, it's not easy, and you have to monitor and improve it over time. So start with the problem. What is your main problem? So now, as a business owner, my problem might be I'm spending entirely too much time in my email, responding, answering, figuring out what's important and what isn't. Cool. I can build you an agent that will help you with that in 10 minutes, right? That's different than, we have, let's say, a trucking company. We have hundreds of trucks. We need help with X, Y, and Z. Okay, let's dive into those problems and figure out what the best solutions for each individual problem is, instead of saying, I have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That's not that. And that's what's happening. And that's why things are not working out well. We've just abandoned design. We've abandoned how we dig into a problem first and figure out what the best solution is, and gone straight to, I have this cool technology and I want to play with it. So that's going to be my starting point. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah, everything looks like a nail if you have a hammer in your hand. I think that's a really good analogy that some people need to think about. I wonder, even before that, what's your opinion? What's your stance on AI readiness? Do you think people need to have certain processes and procedures in place to start implementing the tools before they ever even think about the problem? Or what are the ways you're tackling some of that?
So to the smaller and medium-sized businesses, my saying to them is, don't DIY your AI. And I've been on a couple of enterprise projects where I've come in and those projects were designed by people who have no AI experience, and that is not the way to go. So if the AI readiness has a few different layers to it, there's people, there's tools, there's processes, there's legacy tech, it's a laundry list. And I deeply believe at the enterprise level, they should be bringing in experts to get their projects off it's so much cheaper to hire a consultant to put you on the right path than to avoid those consulting fees and go off the rails, right? Spend it now, save it later. Readiness means a lot of different things. And if you're not experienced in that space, you're going to miss some of them, and your project's going to get stuck, or you're going to push through and put something out into the world that creates a ton of emotional debt. If you don't know what that means, you should Google it, because it's one of the most important metrics in AI right now. And it's one of the most overlooked. So trust, a really wise woman taught me this saying, trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets. And every leader out there, absorb that, what it means. And I'll give you a personal AI experience that I actually ended up writing a talk and delivering a talk on, called "The Best Voice Agent I Ever Used Was a Complete UX Failure." It's on YouTube. You can use something every month and it can work like clockwork. So I get one of my medications from a big company. Every month it comes like clockwork. I fill out a little form, put the order through, and it comes 2 years, no problems, right? And 1 month, things didn't work right. And long story short, I've wrestled with their human agent, their voice agent, their human chat agent, their AI chat agent. And it wasn't until I got the third human on the phone who actually knew how to take action that it got fixed. And I ended up getting my medicine a week late. That one negative transaction took so much out of me, and it was so much work to get the ship righted that those 2 years of everything going smoothly were wiped out in one or two, exchanges. And that's what emotional debt is. And that is what makes people leave. 100 perfect interactions, they will leave you over one really negative. And that's what emotional debt is. And it's caused partially by context debt, which is when your voice human agent isn't aligned with your AI voice agent, and your chat human agent isn't aligned with your chat AI agent, and none of them can fix the problem your user is having. And that's called context debt. And these are all things we're seeing in abundance, even from the biggest companies with the biggest budgets. And it's because everything is kind of new and they're still figuring it out. And it is costing you customers, which is costing you down the line. And figuring out how to bring that metric to leadership and show the financial pain of emotional debt is an area I'm kind of living in right now, in the sense of just trying to teach people what this is, how to calculate your losses, and how to prevent them. And also trust design. Trust design is going to be an area of design that you will hear more about in the future, because companies are losing trust in buckets when their experiences aren't, user friendly, which there aren't. A lot of people are talking about how it seems like everything is not working as intended right now, and they blame vibe coding and they blame all kinds of different things. But I think a lot of it just comes from a rush timeline, a small budget, and well, believe me, I've worked on these design teams. Designers do not want to design dark patterns, but the business pushes them to. So that's a story as old as time. And it's just worse now.
It's definitely true. People are not sure what we're building, but let's just slap some AI on it and hope it goes good. What is everyone getting wrong about AI agents right now? What's the biggest misunderstanding about AI agents? Obviously, context and emotional debt being one of those, and specifically in conversations. But what is the biggest misunderstanding with AI agents right now?
I think it's the set it and forget it mentality. I theorize that there will be a whole discipline around evaluation and optimization. Like yesterday, I saw a job ad for an AI eval specialist, and the salary was 600 to 800 grand a year. Right. So evaluation specialists are starting to come to fruition because companies are realizing, oh, we can't leave this thing alone after it's built. Like, we have to see what's happening and improve it. It's more so at the enterprise level. When you're doing millions of calls or millions of transactions or millions of workflows, it's a little bit different than when you have a little a voice agent that handles some of your inbound phone calls. If you have one little retail store, it's a little bit different. But I think that's what leadership especially gets wrong, that it's going to be fast, it's going to be cheap, it's going to be easy, and we'll be able to set it and forget it. And I keep seeing post after post after post about people blowing their token budgets. And that's something else that leadership needs to wrap their head around, is the cost comparison between humans and AI. I think they're saying, we didn't realize AI would be more expensive than humans. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think it's multiple things that are getting wrong, depending on multiple things that are generally, which is it's going to be fast, it's going to be cheap, it's going to be easy, and we're going to be able to set it and forget it. I think those are the main ones.
Yeah, assumptions are like the death of every single project. If you assume something to be correct and don't test your hypothesis, it always comes back as incorrect. It's always the opposite of what you thought.
Yeah.
But very hard to explain that to people. The rise of conversational stuff, I think that's where people are starting to realize that this is becoming a problem. Like, if you can't have your conversations be correct for voice or chat or SMS, then you immediately feel the impact. If it's working on an internal document and you don't see the immediate impact, or the customer immediately clicking unsubscribe, you don't know that you've made a big mistake? You've done
Right.
actually a lot with some of these conversational AIs. Do you think that's where everything's going? Or give me some thoughts on this.
Balance in all things. That's where I think everything should be going. So, I mean, I have been bullish on voice, but in the sense of not every interaction needs to be static anymore, static UI anymore. So bullish in the sense of voice is going to take over some things when it is appropriate. Voice is not appropriate when you're in a packed, loud airport and you need to give your credit card number, or you have a newborn in your lap that just fell asleep after 2 days of not sleeping. You don't want to talk, right? So where a lot of my theories is how do we design the perfect interface for the perfect moment? And that's where I'm having the most fun experimenting. How do we detect that? How do we have a toggle? What's the difference between a voice agent and then flipping your chat agent to speak, right? It's a voice agent built to be a voice agent is one thing. A chat agent that allows you to flip a toggle and have it convert to uh, audio is different. There's so much to think about and so much great, like if you love to experiment, it is a great time to be alive. So yeah, things are changing rapidly to say the least.
Segue on that. Where do you think the future of the workplace is really going? Like customer service roles and then like employees' relationship with this technology. How do you think that will look over the next 5 years?
I think it depends on the company. So everybody talks about what IKEA did. What IKEA did was like 3 years ago. People talk about it like it just happened. So IKEA did this thing where they took all their call takers, outsourced a lot of that high volume, low risk incoming customer service calls, and it has an AI doing it now. But what they did was retrain those customer service agents to help people make design decisions, because that takes human to human contact in the sense of walking people through design, right? So they basically turned all those customer service agents into sales agents. So now every company I've ever worked at, I've proposed this, and it depends on the company and what their goals are. Do they need more salespeople? I went to a chief AI officer conference and they were practically high on cutting headcount. Like if cutting headcount is a goal, they're never going to retrain their customer service agents to do anything, right? So, I keep talking a lot about trust and ethics, and people are seeing the writing on the wall. And I think we're starting to see things start to crumble even for Meta, right? Like what happened with Meta and the lawsuit in New Mexico, it's almost $1 billion they have to pay. And there's 27 more states in line after New Mexico. So it's in the news, right? Like we want honesty, we want transparency, we don't want you addicting us, we don't. So this whole thing around trust design, I think, is going to be something we see a lot in the future. And I think we're going to start seeing some ethics washing, right? Similar to greenwashing, where companies, it's like the food labels that say no trans fat, and then you flip it over and read the ingredients, and the first ingredient is hydrogenated oil, right? I think we're going to start seeing companies try to pull the wool over our eyes around what their ethics are, right? The chief ethics officer at OpenAI just quit this week. Right. So, I think people are not just going to demand ethics. They're going to demand real proof, transparency. I think people when it comes to kids in social media, people in the beginning didn't know it was hurting kids. And then they did know that it was hurting kids, and they turned to the government to fix it. And the government couldn't fix it because they take too much money from these tech companies to fix it. So now parents are taking things and states are taking things into their own hands, and they're suing everybody. And I think in the end, people are just realizing and learning we have to demand trust, and we have to demand transparency, and we have to take those matters into our own hands. And I think these big tech companies are going to realize that in the end, maybe it is cheaper to be ethical and transparent, because people will not stand for anything else, because people are seeing social media has good points, And one of the good points is bringing some of this truth and transparency to the people, and people waking up and saying, you know what? We have a whole generation of kids who are damaged by this tech. Our government allowed it to happen. What are we going to do about it? And now they are doing something about it. And that should be causing pivots from how these big tech companies do business, because a lot of times it was just like the cost of doing business. But, if 27 states get nearly the $1 billion that New Mexico just got, that is beyond the cost of doing business. That is, I forget what Meta's valuation is, but it's not 27 billion. And New Mexico is a tiny state compared to New York and California, who are pursuing the same types of lawsuits. So that 900 million, I think it's close to 900 million that New Mexico just got, could be even bigger for bigger states. So I'm hoping that we're going to come full circle where the cost of doing business is, let's just do the right thing from the get-go because it's cheaper. And I know that's kind of pie in the sky, but let's see how it all shakes out.
I think AI will probably just amplify people, and whether that's for good or whether that's for bad, it'll also amplify the people that are fighting for good, and that'll inevitably come around. But I think that will be the way that it happens. It'll be, it's the bad for a while, and then the good will inevitably catch up, and it's starting to.
Yeah, I hate when I sound like one of the guns rights people, but I keep saying it's not the tech, it's the people who have the tech. Good people are going to do good. Some, bad people are going to do bad. And some people, like I've done a little bit of research about people in Nigeria and India where they run scams for a living because they have no options and they don't feel safe to leave. So I feel like there's 3 categories, right? Good who will do good, bad will do bad because they are bad, and then people that sort of get forced into being scammers because they're either being victimized or they don't have choices. So I feel like that could potentially be addressed, and maybe some aid could be brought to those people who don't want to do bad with the technology but are either victimized or feel they have no choice. Like, hurt people hurt people. I really believe that, and I wonder if there's anything we could do to help people who need help so they don't feel forced into using technology as a negative. But then the people who are going to build bioweapons and things like that, there's no fixing that. All we can do is try and stay ahead on security. And I use the movie Pacific Rim, right? Like as an example of, like, they had those 2 giant, like, transformer looking kaiju bots fighting each other. And I think in the end, security is going to come down to who can afford the best AI to fight off it's not really good versus bad. It's secure versus insecure, or security fighting back being hacked, or whatever it is. It's going to be bot to bot. Like, the best tech wins the security. And that's pretty terrifying when the best tech is falling in the hands of, companies that are a little unsavory.
I think this will be a spotlight for small business. We'll come back to AI guide rails, but like underserved, underprivileged small businesses historically didn't have access to the same technology as large companies. AI is leveling the playing field. Is the lack of education or the lack of knowledge on what tools are out there? What's the real killer that's not letting small business take advantage of the opportunity?
Well, I think it's twofold. I do think, like, we saw it with Fable and how expensive Fable is. So underserved will stay underserved because they're not going to be able to afford certain things. So, but right now, everybody pretty much has access to the same thing. So I think down the road, there will be kind of a class warfare around technology, who can afford the best and versus who can afford, whatever it is they can or can't afford. So I think right now we're in the golden age of access. I think that might change, but you are only as effective as you are a good operator. I talk about being a good AI operator all the time. So one of my techniques, and it is something I do all day, is prompts in the realm of, all right, I need to write an article about, I don't know, building effective voice agents. I want you to interview me until you have everything you need to put together an article on this. I want you to use my exact words and just shape them into an article. right? To me, that's AI assisted, right? It is my thoughts, it's my knowledge, I'm just using the AI as an extractive tool. And I teach this all the time. So there's that piece of it as far as being a good AI operator and not a slop generator. That's one piece of it. But I think the other piece of it is learning agents where in this, someone like me who is a solopreneur, I have agents do all kinds of things for me, which make me way more effective and get a lot more done in a day than I ever could have without those agents. So, it's skill level. Like that single person $1 billion company, that's not going to happen for somebody who isn't a good, highly skilled user of the technology. So people who feel like, oh, I'm behind, I'm so behind. I wouldn't say you're behind, but you have a road ahead of you where the skill, like the goal should be being a very skillful user of the technology versus just, generating. There's a huge difference between being a good operator and a slop generator. And I see it even with people highly skilled designers that don't even realize yet that there is a whole skill set to doing really good non-slop spec driven design. And it isn't, you have to learn. What my fear is that just like we saw with UX design, these boot camps are going to pop up and promise you a $200,000 job and a 6-week training. And that is not reality either. But you definitely can teach yourself to be a good AI operator and not just using it, like generate me a LinkedIn post about whatever it is, right? We're seeing tons of people do that. And you have to have a skill set. It's not just ask for the thing and then post it or use it. And we're starting to see companies starting to create, writing policies and how they want their employees to use the technology because it's just not as simple as everybody thought. It's not ask for a cookie, get a cookie. It's more than that. And people who, especially small businesses, if you become a really good operator, you can really do the work of 3-4 people. I have a little bit less guilt of arming, say, a single mom of 3 who runs a beauty salon from her home. I don't have guilt teaching her how to upskill herself to be all the things that she needs to be with the assistance of AI. Whereas I am not going to be someone who builds things for companies making record profits so they can lay people off to be more profitable. That's not ethical to me.
I think I'll segue that into AI guardrails, the ethics and governance of everything. How should businesses be thinking about this? Should they be worried about moving too fast? What exactly are you telling businesses to do when it comes to their AI guardrails?
Well, it's funny because I just joined a startup and day 2, I was like, governance needs to be our first, one of our first things we undertake because everything is connected to it. Right. So, some companies, it depends on what they do, but like for anything that's highly regulated, you have to talk about governance on day 1, right? You have to make sure things stay on the rails. And there is a big difference between like prompting guardrails and building guardrails into the system. And I think there will be mistakes. I think there will be backlash, and I think people will hire those experts. Because you need governance in so many different ways. I mean, governance can land in model behavior, but it can also land in what are your rules for your employees. So governance is a spectrum. It could be completely on the founder. I don't suggest that. It should be across teams. It should be spoken about. It should be ever evolving. If something goes sideways and you never addressed it in your governance, guess what? You need to update your governance. So, this is something that I get eye rolls when I say this should be the first thing. Spend it now, save it later. Like spend the time on your governance and your guardrails early on. I think it was Chevy had a chatbot and a developer just trying to prove a point got that chatbot to give him a $50,000 truck for $1, right? Like, so who's the human on the hook when something like that happens? Naming that human on the hook is part of governance. It's something that gets eye rolls, but then when I bring something up like that $1 truck, like if your governance was handled from the beginning, that probably wouldn't have happened. Right? You would have taken care of business. You're saving yourself stress and crisis and all kinds of things by building out your governance policy first and making sure that it's touching everything it needs to touch and that it's evolving, ever evolving, because we're learning new things all the time as far as safety and the whole thing with character and AI and the children have hurt themselves and right, like if there was a governance policy from the beginning, maybe that wouldn't have happened. So I just think that governance, guardrails, model behavior, I think it's a great job for UX researchers to slide into. I think it's right in their wheelhouse. But it's not something to roll your eyes at and move on from because you think you're going to save $2 trillion by firing everybody. And a lot of it starts with the ethics of the C-suite and how people are dealing with their, profitability and thinking about the next quarter instead of thinking about a long-term plan.
Absolutely. That is fair. If you're talking to a small business owner that wants to seriously implement AI, what is the first thing you're recommending that they build? What AI agent should
A
they be
curriculum to teach themselves these things. Build a curriculum first. And it's one of the best things about AI is ask the AI about the AI, right? You can use AI to teach you just about anything. So first thing you should build is a curriculum for yourself so you can self-teach. Understand what a good operator is versus just a slop generator. And that's, you could just, ask any LLM about that subject. But one of the things that I love is that interview technique of, you could say something like, I own a small business that does X. I need to teach myself everything I need to know about using AI to achieve X, Y, and Z goals. Create a curriculum so I can self-teach. And you're off to the races. Because it's so hard to teach yourself something that you really don't know anything about until you have an AI in your life where you can say, I want to learn this. And you can also just say, the prompt that I just said, I want to build a curriculum so I can learn this. Ask me as many questions as you need to so we can customize the curriculum to my skill set, to my business, to my goals. And then it will ask you so many questions. And I love being asked these questions and being able to go back and forth. I did a PRD like this. It took me 8 hours to answer all the questions. Right? I said, I want to build a website where I can teach people, blah, 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 blah. Ask me as many questions as you need to create a PRD. That's a product requirements document. And I was exhausted at the end of those 8 hours, but I knew my product so deeply from answering all those questions. And it's the same thing with teaching yourself. It's just a matter of learning how to use the AI as to extract, but also to teach and customize whatever it is you're trying to learn in a way that is palatable for you. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll find something super complex, like a white paper. White papers are so hard to get through. And I'll take the white paper and I'll say, explain this to me on an 8th grade level. So I could scan through it really quickly and be like, all right, I understand this at its base level now. And I understand it quickly. And then I'll say, if it's something I want to move forward with, I'll be like, all right, now explain this to me at a higher level. And then once I kind of get that higher level baseline, I'll say, all right, now teach it to me at an even higher level, right? And then I can kind of create my expertise. But there's no shame in starting at a really low level, especially things that are complex, and building that knowledge through the request of, all right, I understand this at a really base, like 8th grade level now. Now teach it to me this way. Now teach it to me that way. Or learning it at the 8th grade level and say, oh, you know what? Now that I understand this so quickly and so simply, I'm not interested. I'm going to move on to something else. So, there's so many techniques to use it in a way that is, educational, but also not super time consuming until it's something that you've decided that, yes, this is what I'm interested in. I want to go deeper on this. So it's just a matter of becoming a good operator. And that happens over time and over experimentation and really just embracing that you have to learn skills. You're not just going to, slide right into it and be a great operator on the first day.
Absolutely. Where can people connect with you and learn more about what you're building?
I'm the only Cantera on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn is the best place. You can also contact me through the elementylintelligence.ai website. And I would say those are the two best. I don't really hold anything back. I do a lot of free webinars, a lot of free teaching. I have voiceofai.io, which is for designers to upskill for free. I don't really put learning behind a paywall currently because I just think that people are in crisis and they need to learn for free. So definitely my LinkedIn has all that right there, and voiceofai.io also has, if you're a designer looking to learn more about designing AI products, that's a great one. But yeah, LinkedIn, find me. I'm very easy to find.
Alrighty. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mason.